continue. So, in addition to the obvious, as I said, the death, of course there are injuries, and those are, the wounded people are people that are often forgotten. At least they tell you, at least the ones that died are no longer in pain. But the wounded remain, and they don't have any compensation, they hardly have any medical treatment. The government does not help them in any way, and with 40% of the population in Yemen living under $2 a day, most of the time they cannot afford paying for medical services. I have a video here, hopefully if it comes back on, of a farmer who talks about what he saw that day when the drone's missile struck. I'm hoping that it's going to work. If not, okay.
هلما الطائرة بعتضرب ولعت منها زي الترين وانطلقن يعني انطلقن اول ما له 2 صواريخ وبعدها الحقت 2 وما وقعت الا واشتعلت النار في السياره والمجاريح يعني جينا احنا كنا قريب جينا وان المجاريح زقلوا والمقاتيل والسياره قد يعني قد هدمت ما عاد حصلنا الله قد تغيير وربشنا المجاريح واصعبناهم ردا والمقاتل ويناهم لعنانا المسجد والقيناهم امسوهانا وطلعناهم الصباح 11 واحد ما عاد يطلع قد هو قطم لغلغناه في بطانيه وقبرناه هنا.
Obviously, this is another aspect of the impact of these airstrikes, is that people can't even bury their dead most of the time, because from the explosion, the bodies are in pieces, and you no longer know which piece belongs to who. And this is something that none of us really think about until you see it, and it's really quite disturbing. And even to identify, was it really my relative who passed away, and how do I identify this? It's quite difficult. I want to go back to the second impact that I want to talk about, is the destruction of public and private properties. Obviously, in such attacks, you'll have large destruction in the area. One place that was hit by a missile is the Al-Razi Hospital in Ja'ad, in the very impoverished province of Abiyan. And this man was talking about what happened to him the day a missile struck and the day there was a drone strike. They hid in the hospital, which was hit, and then they ran to the school, which was also hit. These are two public institutions that are not supposed to be hit any time. If you look at the other photo, this is a photo I took of the hospital after the attack. Used to be a hospital. This is the second floor of the hospital, no longer obviously functioning. These are homes homes in a village called Al-Kud in Abiyan. I visited Al-Kud in 2010 prior to any drone strikes in the area, and it's a very impoverished area. People are extremely friendly, super nice. And I just thought to myself, there's no water, they have to go very far to just get water, and no clinics, no schools, and that's really what they were looking for. And I thought to myself, my God, it can't get worse. And yes, it can. And these people were displaced. They had to live in schools in the nearby city of Aden for a very long time, and their homes have not yet been fixed. They have nowhere to go, and obviously no money to fix the houses. The third this is a sound file that I put together of a drone flying followed by a missile explosion. It's usually much louder than that, but I wanted you to get a sense of what people hear. And when we talk about drones hovering, when we talk about a missile strike, it's not just this ambiguous sound, it's a frightening sound. It's a sound that people have to hear over and over again. It's a sound that has terrified a lot of people in the country. Many people have stopped going to social gatherings. Many people have, there have been many miscarriages by pregnant women. Many people have stopped going to weddings and funerals. In fact, both weddings and funerals have been hit by a drone strike. Recently in December, this past December, a wedding was hit and the bride was killed amongst the civilians killed. Intisar al-Qadi, who you see right here, she's a former member of the National Dialogue, and in January this was just one of her Facebook statuses. She wrote many when she goes back to her region of Marib. And this is just one of her, going back, and she keeps hearing these drone strikes. It's nerve-wracking to think that, what if it hits here? And I remember, I've been to many of these areas that have had drone strikes, or airstrikes in general, and I remember really feeling terrified, thinking, what if I'm at the wrong place at the wrong time? What if? And I don't live there, in these areas. In the capital, we heard it once, where I live, for 3 days during the Eid holiday, and that was terrifying, but I thought, no way, they will not, of course, send a missile to the capital, so probably it's just surveillance. So at least I comforted myself, thinking that. The second photo here is this is a boy in Marib that I met, and he was just showing me how he hides in school every time he hears a plane. He doesn't know if it's a drone, he doesn't know if it's just a regular plane or an airstrike, but every time he hears a plane, that's the position he puts himself in. And it's, again, a sign of this living in fear. Of course, all of these killings, the injuries, the destruction, creates trauma. We see here from Sumaya, she lost her father, and she found out when she came back from school, and she was really, really traumatized, and also very worried. She has anxiety because she's the oldest of 5 children. She doesn't know what to do. How can she help her family? She was complaining that she was getting headaches. That's it. But really, it's a lot more than headaches, what she was suffering from. Ali's father was also complaining that he felt helpless. Why did he feel helpless? His 13-year-old boy was disfigured. I saw this kid. His entire upper here was, I don't know how to explain it, but it was almost off. From a shrapnel. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time, walking to school or after school, I can't remember. And a drone strike hit nearby and the shrapnel hurt him. He wasn't killed, but he was disfigured. And he's a 13-year-old teenager. He wants to look good. He doesn't want to go to school looking like that. And he's basically stopped going to school, and he attempted suicide. And his father just really doesn't know how to help him. One of the NGOs paid for his surgery, so at least that was a great thing, but he needs a lot of reconstructive surgery that they can't afford. These are just some of the stories that we have collected, and we want you to know about, because that's what people feel, and that's what people, in Yemen and Pakistan and other countries have gone through. And these are average civilians. They're not militants. These are people that are stuck between, living between the horrors of Al-Qaeda militants and the horrors of fighting militants, and they're stuck in between. The backlash, this woman, I think her quote was really powerful, I felt, because when she talks about being between life and death, that's how many people feel. You never know you're going to live the next day or not, and you're somewhere in limbo, somewhere in between those two. Now, of course, all of these things create a backlash, or as was discussed about the counterproductiveness of this counterterrorism. First backlash that I see, for example, is the resentment against the Yemeni government. For example, Mohammed Muqbil here, a man who lost 3 relatives in a drone strike, this is the quote he told Reuters. It's basically people are not trusting this current transitional government, And it's delegitimizing them, and they're very weak and very unstable, and delegitimizing the president of Yemen, who publicly announced that his support for the drone strikes. The other backlash is the radicalization and recruitment. When there's no means to seek justice, when people are not even admitting that these things happen, you have no public admission by the Yemeni government or the U.S. government most of the time. You don't have a public apology. You don't have compensation. People feel the need to seek revenge on their own. And you have many brothers, many sons, many fathers who have joined militants not because of ideology, but simply to seek revenge. And this is one father who said, I will even join Satan if I have to, in order to get revenge for my boy. This is his boy. He had severe burns in most of his body. He was being treated in Sana'a, in the capital, because thankfully there was a businessman who paid for his treatment. I forgot, can you go back? Yeah, no, if you go back. Something I think that's very important, this one. There are too many anti-Al-Qaeda imams and preachers that are being killed by airstrikes. It's quite ironic because these guys are preaching against the hateful ideology of Al-Qaeda, and yet they're being killed by a drone strike or a Yemeni airstrike in the name of fighting terrorism. And this is quite problematic because, anybody's death is quite problematic without due process. But these guys have been very vocal, such as his brother, very prominent imam in the region of Hadramaut, and his last Friday sermon was about the hateful ideology of Al-Qaeda, criticizing it. And after that he was killed in a drone strike. I think the last but not least, and this was also addressed, which is the increased animosity towards the U.S. government. Thankfully, thus far, most Yemeni people still distinguish between American people and the American government. I worry that this might change in the future if this policy continues. The Yemeni public opinion about the U.S. government is extremely low now, and this is, of course, it's a product of accumulation of grievances, not just the airstrikes, but the drone strikes have really increased these grievances, and this is one protest we saw in Yemen, where they burned the U.S. flag. And they're saying La Wasaya Amerikiya, no to American hegemony, one of the slogans in the protest. And just to show, one of the backlash or impact of these drone strikes. Now, I would like to finish this by saying, what can you, all of you here, do? Which is, I think, the most important question we should all be asking ourselves, and hopefully you're asking yourself too. I'm hoping that you can prove this wonderful mother wrong. She thinks that most of you here, or most people in America, don't see her and the people in Yemen as human beings. I tried to explain to her that that's not true. I know American people, and I know that there's a big disconnect between the American values and between the U.S. foreign policy. But someone needs to bridge that gap, and someone needs to change this foreign policy, and someone needs to prove to this woman that this is a human issue. This is not a Yemeni issue. This is not an American issue, not a Pakistani issue. This is a human issue. How can we do that? Awareness sessions just like this. Please, please, please question what you read in the media. Don't, believe everything that you read. And finally, advocate for a foreign policy that represents you. So to conclude, terrorism is a great concern in many parts of the world, but it's how we address it that matters. We shouldn't forget about the questions of legality and morality. We shouldn't forget that we're all human. these citizens that you saw, most of them live outside major cities. Most of them feel forgotten by Yemenis and by people outside. And most of them don't really care if they're killed by a drone strike, an airstrike, by Al-Qaeda. They just don't want to be killed. And so, to conclude, I want to ask, maybe this sounds weird given the title of this, that we try and make this discussion not about drone strikes, because I think that's what they want us to focus on. That's kind of, they're narrowing it down. But it's about people don't want to die. It's about murder. It's about a policy of systematic killing without any transparency, without due process. And that's what it should be about. Thank you.